She said, "Don't even think about proposing. My friends will laugh at whatever cheap ring you can afford." So I didn't. 1 year later I proposed to someone else with a 12,000 ring at the same. This story is completely true and happened over the course of about 4 years. I'm still kind of processing how perfectly everything fell into place. Fair warning. This is long, but I promise the payoff is incredible. Grab some snacks because this is a roller coaster. Also, I changed some names and minor details for obvious reasons, but everything else happened exactly as I'm telling it. So I 29 Malia working as an electrician in a mid-sized city, making about $52,000 a year. Not amazing money, but decent enough for someone without a college degree. I came from a pretty humble background. My dad was a mechanic who taught me the value of working with your hands, and my mom worked part-time at a grocery store. They always said, if you work hard and treat people right, good things will come. I've been doing electrical work since I was 20. Started as an apprentice and worked my way up. Had my own little apartment, reliable truck, some money and savings. Nothing fancy, but I was proud of what I'd built for myself. That's when I met Madison. Madison, 26 female, was hands down the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in person. We met at my buddy Tom's housewarming party about 2 years ago. She walked in wearing this designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and every guy in the room turned to look, but somehow I was the one she started talking to. She worked as a social media coordinator for some boutique clothing store downtown. From what I could tell, this basically meant she posted Instagram stories and managed their Facebook page for about $31,000 a year. The way she talked about it, you'd think she was running Apple's marketing department. I'm basically responsible for the entire digital brand experience. She'd say it's a lot of pressure because everything has to be perfect. One wrong post can destroy a company's reputation. Madison was fixated with status and appearances. Her Instagram had like 15,000 followers and was nothing but designer handbag posts, expensive restaurant check-ins and selfies, with captions about living my best life and grateful for this blessed life. She'd spend 30 minutes taking the perfect photo of her coffee before she'd even take a sip. Her friend group was the absolute worst. These girls who measured their worth entirely by their boyfriend's salary and the size of their engagement rings. They'd meet for brunch every Sunday and basically just compare notes on their guys like they were trading cards. Oh my gosh. Tyler just got promoted to assistant branch manager at the bank. One would say, that's amazing. Kevin's been talking about maybe buying a BMW next year. Another would add, well, David surprised me with a weekend trip to that new resort upstate. He said, money's no object when it comes to making me happy. It was honestly nauseating. But Madison absolutely lived for these conversations. She'd come home from brunch and immediately start dropping hints about things she'd seen her friends getting. You know, Jessica's boyfriend took her to that new steakhouse downtown. She said it was incredible. Stephanie's getting a spa day for her birthday. Her boyfriend said she deserves to be pampered. Amanda's ring is so beautiful. She's so lucky to have someone who knows how to treat a woman right. The hints weren't subtle. But here's the thing. Madison was gorgeous, funny when she wanted to be. And when it was just the two of us, without her harmful friend group around, she could actually be pretty sweet. She'd curl up next to me during movies, text me cute things during the day, and seemed genuinely interested in my work stories. I thought maybe the materialistic stuff was just insecurity, something she'd grow out of. Once she felt more secure in our relationship, boy was I wrong. We dated for about 20 months, and during that time everyone around us started getting engaged. Her friends kept asking when I was going to step up and make it official. Madison's mom would make comments about how Madison deserves to be treated like a princess, and how real men know how to provide for their women. The pressure was constant and not at all subtle. So, I started seriously thinking about proposing. Madison had been dropping hints for months, showing me her friends' engagement photos, sending me links to wedding venues just for fun, that whole deal. I sat down and did the math after my rent, truck payment, insurance, groceries, utilities, student loans from the trade school program, and keeping some emergency money saved up. I could realistically afford about $2,800 for a ring without going into debt or wiping out my savings completely. Now, I know that probably sounds cheap to some people, but for me, that was a huge amount of money. It meant eating ramen noodles for lunch instead of going out, skipping guys' nights at the sports bar, canceling my Netflix subscription. Basically coping attempt every corner I could for about 8 months. I spent weeks researching rings, reading about cuts and clarity and color grades, visiting different jewelry stores around town. The whole thing was overwhelming, honestly. Some places made me feel like an idiot for not knowing the difference between different diamond shapes. Others tried to pressure me into financing something way outside my budget. Finally found this local jeweler, old school guy named Mr. Patterson, who'd been in business for like 40 years. He was super patient, explained everything without making me feel stupid, and helped me find a really nice ring within my budget. Good stone. Classic setting. Solid quality. Nothing huge or flashy, but definitely a ring to be proud of. Son, Mr. Patterson said, as I was paying for it, the size of the diamond doesn't determine the size of the love. Any woman who truly cares about you will be thrilled with whatever you choose. I thought he was right. The ring sat hidden in my sock drawer for 3 weeks while I planned the perfect proposal. Madison had been posting about Romanos, this upscale steakhouse downtown, for months, always talking about how romantic it looked, how it was the kind of place for special occasions only, how she'd love to go there someday for something really important. Perfect. I made reservations for her birthday dinner, specifically requested the corner table by the window that she pointed out in photos online, had the whole thing planned out. Nice dinner, good conversation. Then during dessert, I get down on one knee and surprise her. I was actually excited, nervous as heck, but excited. Madison's birthday finally arrived and we got all dressed up for Romano. She spent literally 2 hours getting ready, trying on 3 different dresses, redoing her makeup twice because the lighting wasn't right for photos. This needs to be perfect. She kept saying, I'm definitely posting about tonight. We got to the restaurant, and she immediately started taking pictures of everything, the wine list, her appetizer, the candles on the table. She made me retake photos of her at least 10 times until she got the right angle. Make sure you can see the restaurant name in the background, she instructed. I want people to know where we are. Dinner was actually going pretty well, though the food was incredible. Madison seemed genuinely happy and I was getting more confident about the proposal. The ring box was in my jacket pocket, and I kept touching it to make sure it was still there. After our main course, I started steering the conversation toward our future. You know, I've been thinking a lot about us lately, I said. Oh really? She was only half listening, busy editing photos on her phone. Yeah, about how happy you make me. How I could see us maybe getting a bigger place together. Building a real life that got her attention. She put the phone down and looked at me with this smile I'd never seen before. That sounds really nice, Jake. I was just about to signal the waiter to bring dessert when Madison got this serious expression. Actually, speaking of our future, there's something we should probably discuss. My heart started racing, thinking maybe she somehow knew about the ring. What's up, babe? Well, you know, my friend Stephanie got engaged last month, right? Yeah, I remember you mentioning it. Madison's expression changed completely. Jake, her ring is so embarrassing, like I genuinely feel bad for her, but it's tiny and the setting looks so cheap. She won't even post close-up photos because she's ashamed of it, and I felt like someone punched me in the stomach. But I tried to keep my face neutral. That's unfortunate. The thing is, Madison continued, leaning forward like she was about to share some important wisdom. I know you've been thinking about proposing. You're not exactly subtle about it. My mouth went dry. What makes you think that, please? The way you've been acting lately. Asking weird questions about what I like, being all secretive. Plus your buddy Tom's girlfriend mentioned you asked her about ring shopping. Great, thanks Tom's girlfriend. And honestly, Jake, I need you to understand something. My friends would absolutely roast whatever ring you could afford right now. Like it would be complete social ended life for me. The ring box in my pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. What exactly are you saying, Madison? I'm saying maybe wait a few years until you get your career more established. Look around this restaurant. She gestured toward other tables. See those women over there? Those are real rings, substantial rings. I can't show up to events and parties with some tiny department store ring just because you're not successful enough yet. I actually turned and looked where she was pointing. There were definitely some impressive diamonds on other women's hands, but the way Madison said it, like she was explaining basic math to a child, made my injured boil. So you're telling me not to propose because you'd be embarrassed by what I can afford? I'm telling you to be realistic about your place in life. There's no shame in knowing when you're not ready to provide properly for a woman like me, a woman like you, Jake. Come on, look at me. She gestured to herself like she was presenting evidence in court. I'm not trying to be mean, but I have standards. I have a reputation to maintain. My friends expect certain things from the guys I date. And what if I can't meet those standards? Madison shrugged. Then maybe we're not as compatible as we thought. The waiter came by to ask about dessert. I just stared at him for a moment. The whole proposal plan crashing down around me just to check, please. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life complete. Passed away. Silence. Madison kept checking her phone, probably already planning her next Instagram post about the amazing dinner we just had. Are you seriously going to sulk about this? She said as I walked her to her apartment door. I'm not sulking. You made your priorities crystal clear. Good. I'm glad you understand where I'm coming from. This is about being practical, Jake. Someday you'll thank me for saving you for making a huge financial mistake. I just nodded and walked back to my truck. I returned the ring the next morning. Mr. Patterson took one look at my face and didn't ask any questions. He even waived the restocking fee. Son, I'm sorry. Things didn't work out, he said quietly. Trust me. The right woman won't care about the price tag. That weekend, I really thought hard about what Madison had shown me. She didn't see me as a partner or someone she wanted to build a life with. I was just a wallet that wasn't fat enough. Yet everything about our relationship had been her evaluating whether I could provide the lifestyle she thought she deserved. The following Tuesday, I went to her apartment to break up with her. This is about the ring conversation, isn't it? She said. The moment I walked in, it's about you showing me what kind of person you really are, Jake. I was being practical. I was trying to save you from making a stupid financial decision that would have embarrassed both of us. Right? Thanks for looking out for me. She must have heard the sarcasm because her tone changed completely. You know what? Fine. You're probably right to break up with me anyway. I've been getting a lot of attention from guys who actually have their lives together. Good for you. This guy Brandon from my gym has been asking me out for weeks. He drives a Lexus and works in real estate. Makes 6 figures. I'm sure you'll be very happy together. I will be. And you know what else? You'll regret this, Jake. Girls like me don't stay single long. You'll go back to dating basic girls who are impressed by Applebee's and think a promise ring from K Jewelers is romantic, while I'm with someone who can actually afford to spoil me the way I deserve. I'm sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for. I already have options. Brandon's taking me to that new rooftop bar downtown this weekend, the one with the infinity pool and the $20 cocktails. It sounds perfect for you. It is perfect for me because I know my worth. Jake, I'm not going to settle for some electrician who thinks a 3,000 ring is impressive. And there it was. The real Madison finally dropping the sweet girlfriend act completely. I left without saying another word, blocked her number, unfriended her on all social media, and deleted every photo of us from my phone. Clean break. No looking back. Life improved dramatically after Madison. Like immediately. When you're not constantly spending money trying to impress someone who's never satisfied, you can actually focus on building something real. First thing I did was throw myself into work harder than ever. Started taking every overtime shift available. Picked up some weekend side jobs doing residential electrical work. The extra money was great, but more importantly, I was building relationships with contractors and homeowners who kept calling me back for more projects. I also started going to the gym regularly. Something Madison had always complained about because it cut into our time, which usually meant her making me drive her around while she ran errands. Turns out I actually enjoyed working out when I wasn't being guilt-tripped about it. About a year after the ended relationship, one of my regular side job clients, this contractor named Dave, offered me a permanent position with his company, better pay, benefits, and the chance to work on bigger commercial projects. I jumped at it, and suddenly I was making $61,000 a year, plus still doing some weekend residential work. Dave was old school, been in construction for 30 years, and he taught me a ton about the business side of things, how to bid jobs, manage clients, spot opportunities. He kept saying, I had a good head for business and should think about getting my contractor's license. Eventually you're wasting your potential just swinging a hammer, kid. He'd say, you could be running your own crew in a few years if you play your cards right. That's when I met Sarah. It was about 14 months after the Madison disaster. I was doing some electrical work at this medical building downtown, rewiring some offices for a physical therapy clinic that was expanding. The owner, Dr. Sarah Martinez, was there overseeing the renovation. Sarah was 28, absolutely beautiful in this natural, confident way that didn't require 2 hours of makeup and designer clothes. She was wearing scrubs and work boots, hair pulled back in a messy bun, but she lit up the room when she smiled. More importantly, she was smart, like really smart. We started talking about the electrical work, and she asked all the right questions, understood exactly what we were doing and why. She'd obviously done her research before hiring us. I appreciate contractors who explain things instead of just assuming, I don't understand. She said, too many guys in your industry think women don't know anything about construction. Over the 3 weeks we worked on her clinic, Sarah and I talked more and more. She'd bring coffee for the whole crew, ask about our families, actually seemed to care about us as people instead of just hired help. I learned that Sarah had put herself through physical therapy school, opened her own practice at 26, and was building something really special. Her patients loved her. Her business was growing, and she was doing it all through hard work and treating people right. I could have taken a job at one of the big hospital systems. She told me one day, better money, less stress, but I wanted to build something that was mine, where I could really help people. Instead of just being another cog in the machine, I knew exactly what she meant. When the job was finished, I worked up the courage to ask her out. To my amazement, she said yes. Our first date was completely different from anything I'd experienced with Madison. Sarah suggested we meet at this little cafe near her clinic, somewhere casual, where we could actually talk without feeling like we were performing for other people. She showed up in jeans, in a sweater, no makeup, hair down, and she was absolutely gorgeous. We talked for 4 hours about everything, Our families, our work, our goals, what we wanted out of life. She was fascinating. I grew up in a family of 6 kids. She told me my parents both worked multiple jobs just to keep us fed and housed. I learned early that nothing gets handed to you, but if you work hard and stay focused, you can build whatever life you want. She asked me about electrical work, like she was genuinely interested, not just being polite, wanted to know what I liked about it, what my goals were, how I'd gotten started. There's something really satisfying about taking a building that's broken and making it work perfectly. I explained. Like people flip a switch and the lights come on, but they don't think about all the planning and skill that went into making that possible. That's exactly how I feel about physical therapy. She said I was lighting up. People come to me in pain, unable to do things they love, and I get to help them get their lives back. We went on a second date the next week, then a third. Before long we were seeing each other 3 or 4 times a week, and it felt completely natural. Sarah was the opposite of Madison in every way that mattered. She drove a reliable Toyota that she took care of herself, lived in a modest apartment that she decorated with things she actually liked instead of things that looked expensive, and never once made me feel like I needed to prove my worth. Through spending money, we'd go hiking on weekends, cook dinner together at her place, check out free concerts in the park, visit farmers markets, not because we were trying to save money, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company and didn't need expensive entertainment to have fun. I'd rather be with someone who's building something real than someone who's just trying to look successful. She told me once, it was like she could see right into my soul. The best part was how supportive she was of my work goals. When I mentioned that Dave had been encouraging me to get my contractor's license, she immediately started researching the requirements with me. You should totally do it. She said, you're amazing at what you do, and from what you've told me about Dave's business, you could probably start your own company in a few years. Madison had always made me feel like my job was something to be embarrassed about, something I needed to upgrade from. Eventually, Sarah made me feel proud of the skills I developed and excited about where they could take me. After about 8 months together, I knew I wanted to marry her, not because I felt pressured or because everyone expected it, but because Sarah was genuinely my best friend and the person I wanted to share my life with. Around that same time, Dave offered to help me study for my contractor's license exam and said he'd consider bringing me on as a junior partner, if I passed. Between that opportunity and some bigger weekend jobs I'd been landing, my income was steadily growing. I was making about $73,000 between my day job and side work. Sarah's practice was thriving and bringing in around $89,000, and together we were building something solid. More importantly, we were building it together. Supporting each other's goals instead of competing or keeping score. Ring shopping was a completely different experience this time around. Sarah had mentioned loving vintage jewelry, said modern engagement rings were often too flashy and cookie-cutter for her taste. I love things with history and character. She'd said when we were browsing antique shops one weekend, new things can be pretty, but old things have stories. So I spent weeks hitting up estate sales, antique shops and vintage jewelry stores. Finally found this absolutely incredible 1950s ring at an estate sale in the historic district Art Deco setting. Beautiful craftsmanship, way more character and uniqueness than anything modern I could have afforded. The elderly woman running the sale told me it had belonged to her aunt who'd been married for 60 years before passing away. She always said it was the most beautiful ring she'd ever seen. The woman told me her husband saved for 2 years to buy it for her back in 1952. They had the most wonderful marriage. It cost me $4,800, which was more than I'd spent on Madison's ring, but it felt completely different. This wasn't about trying to meet some arbitrary standard or impress anyone. This was about finding something perfect for Sarah, something that represented how much I valued our relationship. I was planning to propose at this overlook about 30 minutes outside the city where Sarah and I had gone for our first hiking date. It was the spot where we'd had our first real deep conversation about our goals and dreams, and it felt like the perfect place to start our next chapter. Then I ran into my buddy Mike at the hardware store. Dude, you'll never guess who I saw at that new sports bar downtown. He said, who? Your ex. Madison. She was there with some guy, but she looked different. Not good. Different. Apparently Madison had been bouncing between different marketing jobs over the past year, none of them lasting more than 6 to 8 months. Mike had heard through the grapevine that she gained a reputation for being difficult to work with and high maintenance. Mike continued. The whole thing with Brandon lasted like 3 months. Where does he parted ways her? Because she was constantly asking him to buy her stuff and pay for expensive trips. Apparently she threw a fit when he wouldn't lease her a BMW for her birthday. Seriously, gets better. She's been working at this tiny marketing firm that's barely staying afloat. They're desperate for clients and she's been trying to land accounts all over town, but nobody wants to work with them. That's when I had an interesting thought. Sarah's physical therapy clinic had been talking about needing help with their marketing and online presence. They were growing so fast that Sarah was having trouble keeping up with the business side while also seeing patients. "We really need someone to handle our website, social media, maybe some advertising," Sarah had mentioned recently. "But we need someone who understands medical practices and can represent us professionally." I wondered if Madison's firm had tried to pitch Sarah's clinic, yet it would be just like the universe to put them in the same orbit again. 2 weeks later, Sarah confirmed my suspicion. "The weirdest thing happened today," she said. "Over dinner, this marketing firm called, wanting to set up a presentation about handling our digital marketing. Normally, I'd just say no. But they were really persistent, and their prices seemed reasonable." "What's the company called?" "Synergy Marketing Solutions. Have you heard of them?" I nearly choked on my food that had to be Madison's firm. "When's the meeting?" "Thursday afternoon." I figured it couldn't hurt to hear what they have to say. I had a very interesting idea. I arranged to be at Sarah's clinic Thursday afternoon, ostensibly to check on some electrical work we'd done a few months earlier. Really, I just wanted to see if Madison would be part of the presentation. Thursday arrived and I was in Sarah's office doing some completely unnecessary voltage tests when the receptionist announced that the marketing team had arrived. "Perfect timing," Sarah said to me. "This should only take about an hour, then we can grab lunch." I kissed her forehead and said, "I'll just finish up this outlet and wait for you 5 minutes later." I heard a familiar voice in the lobby trying very hard to sound professional and confident. "Hi, I'm Madison Chin from Synergy Marketing Solutions. Thank you so much for considering us for your digital marketing needs." I quietly opened Sarah's office door and peeked out. There was Madison wearing what was obviously her most professional outfit, shaking hands with Sarah and trying to make a good impression. She looked rough, not terrible, but definitely not the polished Instagram ready Madison. I remembered her hair was a little too flat, her makeup a little too heavy, and her smile a little too ignored. Consent. She looked like someone who was trying really hard to seem successful, but not quite pulling it off. "This is Dr. Sarah Martinez, our practice owner," the receptionist said. "Wonderful to meet you, Dr. Martinez. I'm really excited to discuss how we can help grow your practice through strategic digital marketing." That's when I stepped out of the office. "Hey babe, I'm almost done with that outlet. Should be ready to go in about." Madison stopped mid-sentence and stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. "Jake." "Oh, hey Madison, what a small world." Sarah looked between us, clearly confused. "You two know each other." "Madison and I used to date," I said casually. "But that was a while ago." "Madison, this is my fiancée, Dr. Sarah Martinez." The look on Madison's face was absolutely priceless. Confusion, shock, disbelief, and something that might have been panic all cycling through in about 3 seconds. "Your fiancé?" "Yeah, we're getting married next spring." I put my arm around Sarah's waist. "I was just finishing up some electrical work, babe. I'll wait in your office while you do your meeting." But Madison's eyes had already locked onto Sarah's left hand and the vintage engagement ring. I watched her face go through about 12 different emotions as she processed what she was seeing. The ring was beautiful, obviously vintage, obviously expensive, and obviously chosen with incredible care and thought. Everything Madison had convinced herself I couldn't provide. "That's a beautiful ring." Madison managed to say thank you. Sarah replied warmly, having no idea of the history. "Jake spent months finding the perfect vintage piece. He said he wanted something with as much character as I have." She laughed and squeezed my hand. "How long have you two been together?" Madison asked, and I could hear her doing mental math. "About 18 months. Sarah said. "Jake's been amazing, so supportive of my business, always encouraging me to chase my dreams." Madison looked like she was going to be sick. "Anyway," I said, "I'll let you ladies discuss business." "Nice seeing you again, Madison." The presentation lasted about an hour and a half. I could hear bits of it through the door. Madison desperately trying to sound professional, while clearly being completely rattled by the situation. When it was over, Sarah came into her office, shaking her head. "That was the worst presentation I've ever sat through." She said the girl kept getting distracted, made mistakes in her numbers, and seemed totally unprepared. "We're definitely going with the other firm we interviewed last week. That's probably for the best. Also, she kept asking weird personal questions about you. Like how long we'd been together, what you did for work, whether we lived together. It was really unprofessional." I wasn't surprised. Madison was probably trying to figure out how I leveled up so much since our ended relationship. But this was just the beginning of the story. Over the next several months, word spread through the medical community about Madison's company's terrible presentation at Sarah's clinic. Sarah mentioned it to colleagues at medical conferences, who mentioned it to other practice owners. Madison's firm lost several potential clients before they even got to pitch. Meanwhile, my life was going incredibly well. I passed my contractor's license exam on the first try, and Dave made good on his promise to bring me on as a junior partner. My income jumped to about $89,000 base salary, plus bonuses and profit sharing. Sarah and I moved in together, bought a beautiful little house in a great neighborhood, and started seriously planning our wedding. We were both thriving professionally and personally. I'd almost forgotten about Madison entirely when my phone rang on a Tuesday evening, about 6 months after the clinic incident. Unknown number. "Hello, Jake. It's Madison." I almost hung up immediately, but curiosity got the better of me. "Madison, this is unexpected. Look, I know this is weird, but I heard through the grapevine that you're doing really well with your own business now." "I'm doing all right. The thing is, I'm in kind of a tough situation right now. The marketing firm laid me off about a month ago, and I'm having trouble finding something new." I waited for her to continue. "I heard that you might be looking for someone to help with administrative stuff for your contracting business, like managing schedules, handling client communications, that kind of thing." I wasn't, but this conversation was getting interesting. Fast. "What makes you think I want to work with you?" "Madison, come on, Jake. We have history, and I know I said some things before, but I was young and immature. You've obviously figured out how to build a real business. Now I could really use the opportunity." "Madison, you do realize I'm engaged to someone else, right?" "Of course. This would be strictly professional. I'm not trying to interfere with your relationship or anything." But then she said something that showed me she hadn't changed at all. "Besides, your fiancée seems nice, very down to earth and practical. I'm sure she's perfect for where you were in life when you met her." The condescension in her voice was unbelievable. Where I was in life, you know what I mean? "But now that you're more successful and established, you might benefit from having someone on your team who really understands business networking and client relations. Someone who can represent your company well at industry events." This woman seriously thought she could manipulate her way back into my life now that I had money and success. "Madison, let me ask you something. How much do you think I'm making now?" "I don't know, 6 figures. Probably try $140,000 between my base salary, bonuses and profit sharing." I heard her sharpen intake of breath. "And Sarah makes about $95,000 with her practice. We're doing just fine." "Jake, I know I messed up before. I was materialistic and shallow and I didn't appreciate what I had, but I've grown as a person. I realize now that what we had was really special. What we had was you telling me I wasn't good enough for you. I was wrong. I can see that now you've become exactly the kind of successful, ambitious man I should have appreciated from the beginning." "Madison, do you remember what you told me the night I broke up with you?" Silence. "You said I'd regret leaving you, that I'd go back to dating basic girls impressed by Applebee's, while you found someone who could actually afford to spoil you properly. How did that work out?" "Jake, please. You just call my fiancée down to earth like it was some kind of backhanded compliment. Sarah is the most genuine, intelligent, beautiful woman I've ever met. She supported my goals when I was making $52,000. And she's celebrating with me now that I'm making $140,000. That's what an actual partner does. I could be that for you now." "No, Madison, you couldn't, because you're still the exact same person who measured my worth by my bank account. The only difference now is that you want it instead of out." Her voice got smaller. "I'm really struggling, Jake. I got evicted from my apartment last month. I'm staying with my parents and it's humiliating. I can't find decent work because apparently word has gotten around that I'm difficult to work with. And you thought you'd call the guy whose heart you trampled because now he has money. I'm desperate. I'll do anything. Filing, answering phones, cleaning, whatever you need. I'll work for minimum wage." The desperation in her voice was actually kind of sad, but I remembered exactly how she'd made me feel that night at Romano's Madison. "I wouldn't hire you to sweep my driveway, but I'll give you some free advice. Maybe if you'd spent less time worrying about looking successful and more time actually developing skills and treating people with respect, you wouldn't be in this position." "Jake, please don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. This is just consequences. Actions have results." "Madison, you chose to prioritize material things over genuine relationships. You chose to treat people as stepping stones instead of human beings. This is where those choices led you. I've learned my lesson. I've changed." "No, you haven't. 20 minutes ago you were still making snide comments about my fiancée and trying to convince me I'd outgrown her. You're still the same person who thinks relationships are transactions. Please. I'm begging you. Good luck with everything, Madison. I genuinely hope you figure things out." I hung up and immediately told Sarah about the call. We spent the evening talking about it, and Sarah's response was perfect. "I actually feel sorry for her." Sarah said, "It must be awful to live your whole life thinking that your worth depends on what other people can give you. She's probably never experienced what it feels like to be valued for who she actually is." That's exactly why I knew Sarah was the one. 6 months later, Mike told me that Madison had moved back to her hometown after her parents got tired of supporting a 27-year-old who couldn't hold down a job. Her Instagram account, which had once been a carefully curated showcase of fake success, went completely dark. Last I heard she was working part-time at some retail store and living in her childhood bedroom. Mike said, apparently she keeps telling people she's a grouping and planning to move back to the city soon, but nobody believes her anymore. Sarah and I got married that spring in a beautiful ceremony overlooking the mountains where we'd had our first hiking date. The vintage ring looked absolutely perfect on our finger. As we exchanged vows, we'd written ourselves. We honeymooned in Italy, not because we needed to show off or prove anything to anyone, but because we'd always talked about experiencing Rome and Tuscany together. We spent 2 weeks eating amazing food, exploring ancient ruins, and dreaming about our future. The best part of this whole story isn't that Madison crashed and burned while I succeeded. It's that I learned the difference between someone who loves you for what you can provide, and someone who loves you for who you are. Sarah fell in love with me when I was making $52,000 and driving a beat-up truck. She's still just as proud of me now that we own our own home and I'm being considered for full partner at the firm. She didn't love me more when I got successful. She just loved watching me become the person I'd always had the potential to be. Madison taught me that some people will only value you when you have something they want. Sarah taught me what it feels like to be valued for your character, your work ethic, your heart. The universe has a funny way of working things out. Madison rejected me because I couldn't afford the lifestyle she thought she deserved. Then she got to watch me propose to a better woman with a more expensive ring in front of her coworkers. Then she lost her job, partly because of the reputation she earned from that disastrous presentation. Then she had to swallow her pride and beg me for help. Then she got to hear exactly what I thought of her values and choices. Sometimes the best retaliated really is just living well with someone who deserves your success. Sarah and I are expecting our first baby next year, and we couldn't be happier. We're building something real together, a marriage based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. Madison can keep searching for someone to fund her lifestyle and validate her existence through expensive gifts. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could almost hear her brain recalibrating, trying to find a way to spin her previous insults into a tough love narrative. "I helped motivate you, Jake," she said, her voice dropping into that soft, manipulative tone she used to use when she wanted me to bail her out of a credit card payment. "I pushed you to want more. In a way, I'm responsible for the man you are today. We could be such a power couple now." "Madison," I said, leaning back in my office chair, the office of a company I now co-owned. "The man I am today is the man who realized that your opinion of my worth was the only thing holding me back. I didn't get successful to prove you wrong. I got successful because I stopped wasting energy trying to make a shallow person proud of me." "That's cold," she whispered. "No, that's practical," I countered, using her favorite word against her. "I'm sure Brandon or one of those real estate guys would be a much better fit for your brand experience. Best of luck with the job hunt." I hung up and blocked the new number. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel smug. I just felt clean. A year later, Sarah and I got married. It wasn't a social event designed for Instagram. We didn't have a rooftop pool or 20 cocktails. We had a beautiful outdoor ceremony at the same overlook where I proposed, surrounded by people who actually cared about us. My parents were there, beaming, and Dave stood as my best man. When it came time to exchange rings, I slid that 1950 seconds Art Deco piece onto Sarah's finger. It caught the sunlight, throwing tiny rainbows across her skin. It was unique, it had a story, and it was exactly what she wanted. As for the cheap ring Madison's friends would have laughed at, I eventually found out through Tom that Madison had actually seen a photo of it back when I first bought it. Apparently, Tom's girlfriend had shown her a picture I'd sent when I was excited. Madison had told her friends it was cute for a starter ring before she gave me that speech at the steakhouse. She'd been willing to throw away a man who loved her because of what a group of brunch-obsessed girls might say about a piece of jewelry. Today, my contracting business is thriving. We have 3 crews, and I'm the majority partner now that Dave is eyeing retirement. Sarah's clinic has expanded to a second location. We have a life built on solid foundations, literally and figuratively. A few months ago, I was at a high-end lighting showroom downtown, picking out fixtures for a luxury condo project. I saw a woman standing at the clearance rack, arguing with a salesperson about the price of a floor lamp. It was Madison. She looked tired. The designer bag she was carrying was a style from 3 seasons ago, scuffed at the edges. I started to walk over, maybe to say hello, but then I stopped. I realized I had nothing to say to her. She lived in a world where everything was measured by its price tag, and I lived in a world where things were measured by their value. We didn't even speak the same language anymore. I walked out to my truck, checked my phone, and saw a text from Sarah. "Picked up steaks for tonight. Bruno misses you. Come home soon." I smiled, started the engine, and drove home to the life I'd built. The one that was finally, truly, mine. Would you like me to tell you about the time Madison tried one last accidental run-in at my new office building?